Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. We haven't seen you in a couple weeks. And I feel like we let you down because we had this topic a few weeks ago. And I remember saying, oh, I'll put it on my calendar, which I did, but then I didn't look at my calendar. So the topic was skin in the game. So the way we've always talked about skin in the game in our family has been, it started when the kids were little. And we would be in like Target or something. And they'd be like, oh, that's really cool. Like, could I'd really like that. Oh, how much is it? It's $20. I'm like, and if it was something that like maybe we've been thinking about, I'm like, well, we'll split it with you. You go 10, we'll go 10. Nah, I don't really want it. So it was kind of a way to gauge like how much they actually wanted something. And then it continued like in the teenage years when we had like an extra car for the family, the kids, if they wanted to be driving that car, they chipped in like X amount a month. And it was nowhere near what the insurance and the car were and gas and all that stuff, but it was something. So like they would each pre-Venmo, give us like $50 towards the car or towards gas or whatever. And it was a way to keep them like vested in keeping the car clean, keeping the car, being responsible to someone other than yourself. Sue, do you have any?
Oh, yeah. No, I do. Well, first of all, we weren't so good at requiring participation, but my kids kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit where they would, they did that, like the thing I love seeing, the lemonade stand. Like that was a big activity in my yard. And then my kids would do summer camp for the 2 weeks where there was no camp and school hadn't started yet. And that was like, I just loved that so much because of how much they got out of it. Meaning it was really a startup, from the idea to having to call someone who didn't pay them. So I loved all of those experiences around them collecting their own money and being in charge of their own money. We never ever did, we didn't do, oh my God, what's the word?
Allowance?
We did not do that really hard word that I just couldn't come up with. And I also
was it allowance?
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't grow up in a house where we got allowance. And so I also, and I don't think Dan did either. So we never gave our kids allowance. But there were points where it was clear that child was asking more than other children. And so like once a kid wanted to go visit a sibling on a gap semester. So we said, okay, so you pay half. And then that kid got a job at a frozen yogurt place. And honestly, the best decision ever, because it really, you spend your money differently when you work hard for it. And she saw how hard people worked who were doing this full time.
Yeah.
And she was doing this part time. So I mean, the number of lessons that come out of a kid having a job to me are like, there's nothing you can do to replace it. And because they didn't get allowance and they wanted things, it was like a really good way to get them to see how much money they got when they got the paycheck. I loved when they saw how much was withheld. I mean, the lessons are endless.
My favorite line, one of our kids still uses, is I'm reimbursing myself, because they'll have like already maybe bought a plane ticket to somewhere they want to go because they know they're getting the check like the following week. They're like, oh my God. Like they're like stressed until they like knew that was because they were banking on it. Right. Yeah. But didn't have it in the bank.
Yeah.
That piece of it. And no, it's funny looking back, if there was, remind me of this when we say what would we do different, because I'll never remember, is so 2 of our 3 had like what they call shift jobs in high school. Our first one did not. And knowing what I know now, I think I like, not that you can require anything, but I think I would have heavily recommended it, because it's really just, I remember reading this book talking about how like when kids have a responsibility to not their family, we're like, Joe is waiting till, one of my kids gets there. He can't have his break till one of my kids gets there. It creates a different sense of responsibility to an adult outside of your family. I wish I could remember the book. It was so good. And I'm like, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. And that kid is like, I have to get there. he's been on for like 5 or 6 hours. Like if I'm late, he doesn't get to leave for his break.
Yeah, so this is a little bit similar, but one of my kids wanted like a PlayStation, whatever was popular at the time. And we said, you've got to earn the money. So they started, again, I think it's very entrepreneurial, but they started with a friend where they would shovel walks for people, because around us, like, you can get your driveway shoveled pretty easily, but it's harder to get your front walks. So this kid made enough money to buy the product he wanted, and then wanted to stop in the middle of winter because he didn't need the rest of the money. And it was just such an interesting conversation, because no, you can't. People are relying on you. Like elderly people who have nobody to shovel their walk have now grown to rely on you coming and shoveling their walk. So that mentality of like, I'm going to work until I have enough to get what I want. I mean, life doesn't really live that way.
No,
you get a job and people rely on you, and then you can't stop. So that was one of my favorite. I loved that one.
Yeah. And I think there is something that goes with that. I think the kid, a 16, 17-year-old kid, I think there is a lot that goes into like their confidence and their, I guess, I don't know if it's their character, but just like developing, they are formative years. And I think there is something that they get from those jobs they don't get other places.
So my
different. You might get accolades in the classroom. This is different. It's different.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to everybody else's experiences, but in my house, one of my favorite things is when we said no to something. So my oldest in middle school wanted a cell phone, and we weren't there yet. We just weren't ready to get her a cell phone. And so she created a PowerPoint presentation to pitch to us the cell phone. And at the end of it, we just felt like proud of the PowerPoint, proud of the effort that went into it. And also she was really good at selling she had a whole section about why it was good for us. Anyway, so
that's smart.
So she got the cell phone, and then it became a thing in our house. Like if you wanted something and we said no, then there was this effort to bring us on board. And I'd like to say it didn't always work, because that would probably be good messaging, that you can't just make a PowerPoint, but so much went into the PowerPoint, so much thought about how to market it to us and show why it was good for them and good for us. And, we have the most delicious family member, this sleeping but adorable, this little guy who's a gal, is the result of a PowerPoint presentation. So I think again, the no around money is it can have its counterpart that's very positive and growth. And in my house, we love that so much. Time for a PowerPoint.
Time for a PowerPoint. No, that's funny. I think there's a lot of good stories. Wait, I had another one on here. Hold on. My phone I need to put my face in it so it recognizes me, because who else would be using my phone? Oh, the other one is like, then as they got to college, was like the working during the summers to have spending money throughout the year for whatever they wanted. Like they were fortunate enough that paid for college and books, but anything else was on them.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, we'd love to hear the ways you work this out in your own family. And I think, in my house, my kids are older. We got many things wrong. They really like telling us about it now.
Exactly.
But I would say that, like, going with what mattered to them at the moment in terms of money and how they could do it. Like, no one was required to do, we'll just be silly and say the lemonade stand, if that wasn't your thing, but finding your thing in the way you could do it. Like one of my kids did summer camp because his sisters did it, and he did a sports one with his friends, and he would come home every day and say, I hate kids. And I like, there's so much, by the way, they loved him. So it wasn't that he wasn't fulfilling the commitment, but he didn't enjoy it at all. So that's such a great lesson to learn that over the summer when you're in high school, that like that path, it's not happening. Like, I'm not going down that path. So
and I love the way you said that. Like, all the kids are different. And if the commonality was maybe they wanted something, right? And the something was different, and the ways to get to it are different. So I love the like, it probably no different than anything else we talk about. Like, well, tell me more about it. Like, tell me, okay, well, how are you going to get there? And like, instead of coming out, no, that's ridiculous. Why do you need that? Right? Like that just creates such strife, like leading into it, like every other conversation, like trying to understand where they're coming from and how they're going to get there.
Yeah, I don't think I was good at that, but I think they were good at seeing where they could be effective. So I don't remember once saying to my kids, "Tell me more about that." On the other hand, they were very good at convincing us that what they came up with was a really good solution for them. And to this day, I think they're pretty convincing. Got some pretty
So
convincing
funny.
kids. Now, I could use other words than convincing, but I'm going to
Totally. Totally. That's right. Our revisionist history really cleaned it up a little.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think that was my last one on my list. But I was remembering your story about being in law school versus undergrad and how you felt when classes got canceled.
Oh, I mean, I saw that with friends of mine who had to pay for undergrad. I couldn't believe their commitment to getting out of it what they could. And I was lucky enough to have undergrad paid for. But when I went to law school, it was on me. And there were times where I thought I could see my fellow students wishing for cancellation of classes when I was thinking, I want to figure out how much money I just lost.
I remember you telling me that.
So, yeah, I mean, it is a really different attachment to things when you paid for that game station or whatever it was, and something breaks, you're really, really mad. You're much more careful about how you covet it, how you treat it. And, if the car already I have a friend who, when the car got scratched, she would have it fixed immediately. And I was like, that's so interesting. I kind of felt like, well, it was, like now it's scratched, we don't have to worry. And she's like, no, once there's a scratch, you're not as careful the next time. So it's like when they pay for it themselves, they're really much more careful.
Yeah. And there's no substitute for it, right? It's like, I always think it ties into like even just early in a career, early in a marriage or whatever, like when you're watching every penny and you develop those habits. It's a hard mindset to leave because it does, it is forming your values around money and budgeting. And it's a different, the decision trees of those early years.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.
Bye.